Welcome to She Sells Radio. I am so excited to bring you our guest today because if you are like me, you are constantly looking for ways to optimize your life and your productivity, both at work and at home. And my guest today is an absolute expert in productivity, organization, helping us feel good on top of our days, on top of our to-do lists, which I am here for it now, especially with two littles under 4. So my guest today is Mridu Parikh. She is the founder of Life is Organized. She's a best-selling author. Her book is called Accomplish It, which I love. And she's the host of the Productivity on Purpose podcast, which I was super honored to go on recently. She also has two teen kids, and she understands mom life at a deep level, mixed with entrepreneur life. So, Mridu, welcome to the podcast. I am so
Thank
happy to have you
you.
here today.
Thanks for having me. We had such a great
Yeah.
time when you were on my podcast, which everyone should go and listen to. And I got such great feedback on
Hmm.
you. And so I'm just so honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. Well, this is like one of my favorite topics and conversations, and I know it is for our audience as well. When I look at the episodes with the highest rankings, a number of them are time, productivity, and especially now with two little boys more than ever. And like,
Yes.
I love a check. I literally have to have a checklist. I was trying to prep breakfast this morning, not breakfast, lunches this morning for both the boys. And my husband, he was like, "Hey, can we talk about our schedule later today?" I said, "Don't interrupt me. I'm in focus mode right now,
Yeah.
like one thing at a time." So I've kind of become this person who needs so much more order and organization than I used to. And I think that's normal, right? As our lives grow and
Yeah.
expand, we need more order, but we don't always feel like things are
Right.
organized. We can feel overwhelmed, we can feel behind. Now, so that's why I'm so excited to have you on today to talk about all of this. Tell us a little bit about your background first. So you were a professional organizer, is that right, before you started your business? And tell me a little bit about what got you into that, your journey, and what it's been like to move into thought leadership and coaching and working with clients in this way.
Yeah. Well, when I was back in the day working in corporate in New York City, I, like you, had a little baby and felt like my nanny was bringing him up. We were in New York. We had an
Mm.
opportunity to move to Nashville, which was not the it city. It was 18 years ago. It was not cool.
Yeah.
But the way my husband got me there was he said, listen, if you go, you don't have to work. And I'm like, sign me up,
Mm.
sister or brother, sign me up. We're there. And although I had my second son when I got here and shortly realized that I really love my work. I want to get back to work, but I don't want to get back to the corporate grind. So I started on this entrepreneurial journey, really,
Mm.
probably like many entrepreneurs having no business getting into business, but I did. And I started with home organizing at a time when it was before the Container Store and the Home Edit. It was, again, also no one knew what it was. And it was wonderful. I loved it, except I realized that what I loved about it was not the physically going in and doing homes, but like teaching people. I didn't actually
Mm.
love that they were leaning on me. I loved when they were learning from me.
Yeah.
So I took my business online and started teaching DIY classes and workshops and online products. And over time, so now my kids are growing up, we have the business, and I'm realizing I am just not using my time well. Unlike you, I was not where you are right now. I was just flailing a lot. Couldn't prioritize. I was feeling
Yeah.
overwhelmed. Sometimes I would just feel like a failure at the end of the day.
Mm.
And so I just went on a personal development journey to figure out how to prioritize and use my time better. And I wish I could say it happened overnight, but a couple of years later when I
Yeah.
came out on the other side and I really literally saw my life just transform,
Mm.
I was like, I know there are other entrepreneurs and other professionals that are struggling with the same things. And so
Yeah.
I moved my business again, made another transition to productivity and time management. And then that's what I
Mm.
do. Now I get to coach and train. And my vision, my goal is to help people be in control of their intentions and their attention. So it creates
Oh,
a ripple effect of impact across their careers and their personal lives.
wow. Intention and attention.
Mhm.
It's so, oh my gosh, it's so important. And yet, one of the most challenging things, right? Like last night, I was doing some sales follow up. I don't scroll Instagram.
Right.
That's like not my thing. But this potential client who I was talking to, she and I were most connected in DM. So I go to send her a message, and like 10 minutes later, I'm looking up from someone's reel. I'm like,
Yeah.
why am I even here in the
Right.
first place?
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe easier said than done. Maybe that's a limiting belief. I don't know, right? This is something you help people with. So tell us a little bit about, I know you talk about there's this one thing that holds women back from reaching their goals, even though they're working so hard. Maybe
Yeah,
it's tied in to what you just shared. I don't know,
it
but tell
is.
us,
It
what
is.
is that and how do we circumnavigate that?
Yeah, it really is. When you work so hard all day from the moment, you open your eyes till you go to bed, you're doing all the things for all the people. And yet at the end of the day, you can have that feeling like, what did I get done today?
Mm,
And it's so frustrating because you are putting in so much energy and possibly even burning out, right? And feeling exhausted. And still you're feeling like, I don't even feel accomplished today. And I think that one thing then that we really are lacking, is just part of this intention and attention, is the focus, or the
mm,
clarity, might be another word,
mhm.
is really just having the clarity on what is most important to me and
Yeah.
what am I willing to sacrifice so that I can stay focused on those important priorities. And here's the thing, I bet if anyone listening, if I asked anybody here, hey, what's the most important things in your life? You could probably say things like, probably my business,
Sure.
my family, my health, right? There's usually those top few, my relationships.
Yeah.
But then if I took a look at your calendar, let's say, it would not be aligned with those priorities. Maybe with business
Mm,
a lot, but
yeah.
some of the other things seem to go to the wayside. Or maybe it's the opposite, or maybe we're spending so much time on other things that we're not getting to the business, right? Other distractions.
Right.
And so it's getting very clear and honest and introspective about what is truly most important. I really love journaling. I think it's such a cathartic
Mhm.
exercise of writing this out and seeing it in front of you and being, okay, wait, if these are my top four, priorities in my life, how am I really showing up for them? How am I addressing them? Are they
Mm.
part of my day-to-day strategy, my day-to-day thinking, my day-to-day scheduling and routine? How am I letting other things get in the way? And I think it
Okay.
really starts with that clarity. And then if you want to go deeper, we can say, okay, well then where do we go from that? But it's
Right.
getting crystal clear, not just saying it in your mind or thinking it, but really like writing that down, almost like a manifesto. Like these are the things, and then how do I
Mm.
start creating the space and the energy around those?
Yeah. Okay. No, I love this. And I've done that in different times of life. And it's interesting because I feel like as we evolve, that changes too. And especially
Yes.
if we have kids, like right now, it's been so interesting moving to Maine and having to reestablish childcare. And we were able to get Jack, our oldest, in school with coverage 5 days a week, which I don't part my mama heart always feels a little conflicted about that, to be honest. Like he loves school, he thrives in
Yes.
it. I don't use it all the time, but I like having it to have the coverage. And then our littlest Luke, though, he's not old enough to go
Yeah.
in. So he goes to someone's home 3 days a week, then he's home with me 2 days a week.
Mhm.
But prior to that, I had 5 days a week covered. So it's just so interesting as we navigate these different seasons of life. It almost feels like we need to reassess, I don't know, quarterly, annually, maybe that's too
Mhm.
long of a gap, but analyze like where is my focus? Where is my priorities? Where are my priorities right now? And then how can I readjust or rearrange my calendar to help reflect that? Right. So
Yeah.
do you encourage your clients to do that on a sort of regular basis, just as life changes go on and situations adjust?
Absolutely. Like I love the idea of an annual plan. I think it's important. It's important as business owners, as just CEOs of our life. But I do feel like it's really far out. Like
Yeah.
it's hard to hold on to a goal that's a year away. So then, yeah, I love to break it down to quarters. Look more 90 days out, and then really on the month and the week too.
Yeah.
So when I work with my clients, I'm like, we always say, I always tell them, what are your top three goals for this week? Let's just bring it back
Mm,
to like your day to day because it's just too far out. Now, most likely it's going to be tied to your quarterly and annual goals, but it
sure.
can be different, right? Because life is always shifting, it's always evolving. For let's say this week, if I'm not feeling really well, so like this week a priority is going to be my rest and self-care,
Yeah.
maybe more so than another week, right? When the
Mm,
priorities are different. But getting very intentional, right? The intention, the attention, very intentional about what are those goals right now.
mm,
We got to start there. It's like reverse engineering from those goals and working backwards and fitting them in versus I feel like we're trying to get everything done in our lives and then we're trying to squeeze in the priorities, right? Instead of
mm.
making those priorities first and then squeezing in all the other stuff around it.
Oh, I like how you said
Yeah.
that.
And
Yeah.
that's how we feel. So when I started, I said, we feel like we get nothing done. It's a terrible feeling. But when you've hit those bigger priorities every day, week,
Yeah.
monthly, then you don't end that way. Even though you're
Mm,
working hard still, you're putting in the energy, but you're like, I just feel so much more accomplished. I feel so much
yeah.
more successful, rewarded, just because I was able to move the needle on those things that matter the most to me.
I was journaling the other day about this concept of living a rich life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we've got a lot of listeners who they come, and a part of my brand and what people are here for is how do I generate more money, more abundance, more financial flow. And I think there was definitely a time in my life when I was so focused on just the money that everything else went to the wayside.
Right.
Relationships, health, self-care. If you asked me what hobbies I had, I would have looked at you like a deer in headlights.
Right.
And so this journaling exercise of like, what is a real rich life? So much more came about from it of like, I care about ultimately it's experiences, right? And I bet a lot of our
Yes.
listeners may feel the same way, like experiences, right? Time with the kids, making
Mm-hmm.
memories, laughing. Obviously, business success and money success is important, but it was so much more robust
Right.
than just, I want to make X amount of money every year,
Yeah.
which is where my mindset was years ago. I'm curious from your perspective, Ritu, how much of this is mindset for women? And I'll give a little context for that question
Yeah.
too, because you mentioned towards the beginning, giving yourself permission to really look at what actually matters in life versus what doesn't.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the women, especially the women in our audience who listen, have been conditioned that I'm only successful if I'm working 8 hours a day, if
Yeah.
I'm grinding, if I'm hustling. That's the only way to be successful. It's push, and not that I'm not about intentional action, I
Mm-hmm.
am. But I remember several years ago when I worked with a mentor who was running a multi-million dollar business, and she worked 3 days a week, or not 3 days a week, excuse me, 3 hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
raising three young kids. And part of what attracted me to her is like, I want to know your mindset where you don't
Yeah.
feel like you have to work all the time, and yet you can bring in way more money and be successful and also be present as a mom. But I see women like almost holding themselves back with this belief of the only way to be successful is if I'm working
Yeah.
40 to 60 hours a day. There's no way I'll accomplish my income goals. Speak a little bit to that, because I feel like there's some friction there for a lot of people.
100%. I believe that success is less about doing and more about planning. So in terms of like
Okay.
time management or productivity, right?
Yeah.
It's way more about planning.
Okay.
So if there's something you would tell yourself, I think in the time when you're like, I'm hustling and everything's hitting me and my phone is blowing up and my email is going crazy, the most counterintuitive thought is let me just step back and plan, right? The number one thing you
Mm,
want to do is react. You want
yeah.
to just like put your head down, let me slam through this, let me go through it. But what happens is you're coming from that reactionary place where you're just throwing in energy, not really thinking it through, trying to cross things off the list. You're still going to end up in that day, you're still going to be like, I got nothing done today. Right.
Mm,
And you're just
yeah.
like, you're feeling exhausted and burnt out.
Yeah.
If you do the thing that's really counterintuitive and it's hard in the moment, but you can train yourself, is pull yourself out of the chaos momentarily,
Mm,
10 minutes, right? And sit and just plan and think, okay, here's my laundry list of things to do. What are my three most important, like top priorities for the rest of this day? I only have a certain amount of time. I got to go pick up the kids. I got to
mm,
run to this meeting and I have a Zoom. So if I could pick three things, what would make me feel most successful tonight? And that is actually the question that
mm.
I always ask myself, ask my clients to ask themselves is not again, not what's the I don't know how else you might look at it, but what's the most important in any other aspect of what would make me feel most successful.
Ah,
So
I like that.
typically the things that make you feel most successful are the things that you've procrastinated, right? The things that you're thinking about when you go to bed at night. You're like, oh, I can't believe I didn't work out
Mm,
again, or I can't believe I didn't do that thing again, or that
yeah.
I got through a lot of my emails, but that one email that's been sitting there for 2 weeks because it takes me time to think of the response. I didn't do that
Yeah.
again, right? And
Yes.
so that is actually a great way to determine, what that is, because that's, I think, a hard thing. You're like, well, how do I just pick three? Well, everything's important. What
Mm,
would make you feel best when you're in bed at night and you're thinking, okay, today was, a great day,
that's a good
and
way.
plan
Mm,
for those. And then take that time to plan, or look at that list and say, okay, wait, I'm just reacting. What can I delegate right now? Or
mm,
what can I How can I respond to a client or somebody else and let them put up some better boundaries and let them know,
Mhm.
you know what, I'll have this to you. Just let you know it's the end of the week. Like all of that comes from the thinking, planning, strategizing space.
Okay.
And it's the complete opposite of reacting and getting through your list. And it's just
Ah,
the hardest. I think it's what you're saying. It's like, it's that mindset. It really starts with, I don't need to do more. I need to plan more.
okay. I've never heard anyone say it exactly that way, but it makes total sense. And I love the focus on what would make me feel most successful.
Mhm.
And it's so funny as you're talking about
Yeah.
this, Rachel. I'm thinking about, yep, I've got my list, and yep, I've got things on my list that I'm like, they're staying on the list, and I'm not taking action on them yet
Yeah.
because there's resistance. They feel hard. There's
Yep.
whatever number of things going on with them. So that's a really good way of putting it and prioritizing those. I want to ask you, I want to ask you some like tactical questions
Okay.
about
Yes.
and I think people have different perspectives on this. So I don't know if there's a one size fits all solution, but I've heard
Mhm.
different things. I'm just curious your perspective. To-do lists versus scheduling in your calendar. What do you tell your clients to do?
I tell them there's a marriage between the to-do
Okay.
list and the calendar. And
Yeah.
I don't believe one works well without the other. That is
Ooh.
it's a
Okay.
true intersection. It's a true marriage. They
Yeah.
come together.
Yeah.
And I can't say they don't work well. Okay. So actually, let me backtrack and say, first of all, the system that works is a system that you'll use.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing, right? So I could tell you 5 different systems. If you're not going to use any of them, they're useless. So
Right.
if you're using a to-do list, it's working great for you, fantastic. If you're using just your calendar, it's working great for you, fantastic. But for most people, we've tried that, entrepreneurs especially, we have so many demands and so many distractions,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of falling. It's just failing. It's not working.
Mm.
So to me, that the intersection between the two, the marriage of them both is where the gold is, where it
Yeah.
happens, where the magic happens. So it's actually having your to-do list, and that's just kind of step one. But it is very important. Brain dumping, breaking
Hmm.
things down. There's kind of a whole art and science to a really good to-do list.
Okay.
And then taking that and picking those, let's stick to the top three, because that's what I just talked
Yep.
about. Pick those top three and put them actually on your calendar, just like
Ah.
you would you're
Hmm.
picking up your kids from school or your client meeting or your hair appointment. You put them on there because there's a really interesting thing that happens. It's mind blowing. Everything seems to make sense when it's on the list, right?
Yeah.
That's why we can see 12 things. And in our minds, even though we are professionals, we are smart, we have degrees, in your mind's going to say, oh, yeah, you could totally finish those 12 things today. Right. And then you get 3 done. And then you feel
Yep.
like crap because you're like, oh, I always fail. It's a self-sabotaging cycle. I
Mm.
never do what I set out to do. It's just very bad. Now, if you pull those 10 and you actually tried to put them on your calendar, you'd be like, wait,
Yeah.
there's no way. There's no way they were going to fit with everything else on my
Yeah.
schedule today. It's a belief bias. We believe we can get more done than we actually can. It's just like a
Mm.
psychological thing. So there's nothing
Hmm.
wrong with us. We're not smart, but we have to actually visually see it. Most people
Okay.
have to actually see it. So what it allows you to do is say, okay, the 10's not going to fit. Maybe five's not even going to fit. Maybe just 4 or 3. And it forces you to prioritize the most important
Mm.
and really think through the day and the implications and the oh, okay, well then if I have to do
Yeah.
that, we'll have to drive here. And it just gets you kind of really thinking. And that's where that planning comes in, right?
Got it.
So it's like, I'm not even doing at that moment, but if I could plan my day really well, I'm going to feel much better. So instead of me thinking I'm going to get 10 done, I get 3 done, I feel terrible. How about I think I'm just going to get 3 done.
Yeah.
I put 3 on my calendar. I get 3 done. Now it's 100% success. And I feel amazing when I go to bed at night. And
Yes.
that feeling is what keeps you motivated. It's what can
Mm.
inspiring for you for the next day. It's
Yeah.
just feeling like I'm in control. I'm successful. I achieve what I set out to do. Like, these are all the signals that we're sending our brain versus
Mm.
I failed again. I can never keep on top of things. I'm always behind. Right. And that's
Yeah.
the signal then. And as you know, it's like your beliefs and your thoughts and it all feeds into
Right.
actions. And so how do we
Yes.
keep that belief system positive? Well, we've got to back it up with that planning and setting out for the right actions.
Mm. Wow. Oh my gosh. I love this so, so much. And I don't think we have time for it today, but I'm really intrigued by this art and science of the good to-do list, like you were talking about before. Maybe people could get resources on that from your
Yeah.
website or
Yes.
your, I
Yes.
know we'll share all of that, but I'm very intrigued by that too. So it's a marriage, makes total sense. That's kind of what mine is doing right now. So I
Mhm.
feel, okay, I can breathe. That piece is, we're doing okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious, one more tactical question, and I know this is so good. I'm like, I could talk to you forever about
Forever we
things,
could talk.
forever and ever. I'm curious though, your take on inbox zero. This is very selfishly a
Mhm.
coaching session for Elise, where I share all the
Oh,
areas where I've over the years been like, what is best? What's the best approach? So what's your take on that? Especially with, by the way, all the inboxes. There's like 12 inboxes, right? Social
right.
media,
Right.
email, phone. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I don't have inbox zero.
Okay.
I think that there's a lot of pressure out there to do a million things, right?
Yeah.
Starting from not just inbox zero, but I should wake up and stand on my head for 10 minutes and journal and meditate and have green juice and, and be
Yeah.
the best mom. And I just, there's just so much pressure to do all these things
Mm,
that quote unquote, all the experts do and everybody does. And at the end of the day, I think you've got to do what works for you
yeah.
and what makes you feel good. So I'm totally fine having I don't have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of emails in my
Mm,
inbox. I have 50,000 emails in my archive box. Like they're
yeah.
there, they're there. In my inbox, I probably have, I don't know, a dozen, 2 dozen, three. It just depends on the
Hmm.
day. And I,
Sure.
I feel okay about that. Like it doesn't make me, I don't need to see a zero to feel good, right? Again, you're going to say,
Mm,
always bringing it
hmm.
back to your emotional state. Um,
Yes.
but if that is stressing you out, then maybe you want to strive for a little less. But if you're like, you know what, I have clients who are like, I have 100 in there and it's fine.
Hmm.
And it doesn't, or 200s like in their inbox, hundreds, thousands,
Hmm.
and it's fine. I only look at the top ones. That's fine too.
Hmm.
I ultimately, it's going to have to be, it's kind of your own determination. For
Yeah.
me, I'm not striving for a zero, but I do get like anxiety if it's more than maybe,
Yeah.
20 or something. Like
Right.
I see it. I have them broken up as, I have used Gmail. So they have like
Yeah.
inbox, the promotions. There's like 4 different categories.
Hmm.
And if it's below the fold, like if I can't see it on my screen, if the emails are going
Yep.
lower than my screen,
Yeah.
then I know it's too much. That's like literally
Ah,
my
okay.
indicator.
That's a good way of
So
thinking
for
about it.
me, for me, just
Yeah.
mentally, it feels like, okay, I can handle that. That's not too much. When it starts going below that, I'm like, okay, I really got to clean this stuff up. So
Yeah.
use your own determination of what's going to like cause you anxiety, but don't do it just because everybody says the gurus do it this way
Right.
or that's the right way. It's no, no.
Yeah.
Right. Just like
What
being
I
a mom, there's a million different ways to raise your kids and there's no right or wrong. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, what you're sharing is so good and aligns with a lot of what we teach in different ways. Just yesterday, I was teaching strategy and method to a group of entrepreneurs and sales professionals. And the thing we said was like, every strategy can work.
Yes.
There's no one
Yes.
right strategy. It's your belief system in it, your
Mhm.
belief level in it, and what works for you, what's most aligned for you. So I feel like you're
Yes.
saying that here with
Yes.
time too, which I love because I think anyone says this is the only way for everyone, I'm automatically like, oh, I don't know,
Yeah.
and antennas up a little bit. So I love that you're saying choose the system that works for you. And then also one thing I'm really taking with me that I'm going to use is what would make me feel most successful
Yes.
today. So what 3
Yes.
things would make me
Mhm.
feel most successful today? Start with those. And then if more gets done, great. But if
Yeah.
not, you're going to have that feeling of success, which is going to breed more success every day.
Every
So I
day.
love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine you got 3 things off your procrastinated list instead of your to-do
Oh,
list. Here's my procrastinated list. Now you even knocked off 2 of them. How
yeah.
great are you going to feel? It's such
Amazing.
it's like really 50 pounds off your shoulders, right? You're just
Yeah.
because you carry that with you every day.
Yes.
It's funny because we procrastinate because we think it's going to make us feel better because we're not doing the thing,
Mm,
right? So we're going to go towards the thing that makes us feel good. So instead of
right.
writing that hard email, let me get on Instagram or do something else. So we're
Yeah.
basically going to the more gratifying thing. But what ends up happening is the thing that we think is going to make us feel better makes us feel worse because we continue
Yes.
to put off, we continue to procrastinate that thing. So now it gets heavier and heavier and heavier, and it feels like it's
Yes.
going to take me longer and it's going to be harder. And like, so it's so funny how we all do it, right? But like the
Yep.
thing we're trying to avoid is what we are, increasing.
So good. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. That's exactly right. It's opposite. It's like
It's
opposite of
totally
how we think,
opposite.
right?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
That's amazing. Tell everyone. So this is so great. I so appreciate you coming on and sharing. And again, like I said, a lot of times these conversations are selfishly coaching sessions for me where I get to hear from different experts in their fields, what works for them, and I apply it, and it's beautiful. Just any other final word of advice for high achieving, driven female entrepreneurs, sales professionals who want more out of life and want to
Yes.
also really enjoy what they're doing, enjoy their experience of life? What would you say? Any final words of advice?
Yeah, I say one of the biggest issues that is undervalued, we don't always see, is our lack of boundaries.
Ah,
And we teach people how to treat us. So our actions are speaking miles, right? So if we react to the text all the time, if we're immediately going back to the email, if we allow the calls at any time at night, if you're on your laptop at 9 o'clock, and by the way, if you're doing any of these things and you choose to, that's fine. But if you start teaching people that these are the expectations, right? That
mm,
you're going to be there at their beck and call, or there's no saying no, or I'm always available. There is a difference, for being a great customer service, which I know we all want, and be great
yeah.
client service, and action having boundaries. And I will tell you, people respect other people with boundaries more. So
Mm,
again, it's so
yeah.
counterintuitive. We think that if I'm there all the time, I'm always responding, they're going to really respect me and highly regard me. I would just challenge your listeners to think about in your own life, the person, or it could be a personal person, it could be some professional, that, when I text them, they're not going to respond till the next morning or the next day, or
Mm,
and not in a bad way, not the person who doesn't respond for
yeah.
2 weeks. We're not talking
Yeah.
about that. Or the person who says, no, you know what? I have too much going on my plate this weekend. Can we do it another time? Right. And just think about that person, because I know we can all think of them.
Mm,
And how much respect do you have for them to be able to uphold those boundaries and say, well, this is what's important to me and this is what's not, instead of just reacting all the time and letting other people's urgency become your urgency. Because when
mm,
we're talking about how we feel, if we're talking about intention and attention, if we're talking about taking control of our lives, it's got to start with ourselves,
yeah.
putting up those boundaries. So I know we could have a whole nother discussion on that, and I'm sure you talk
Gosh,
about that a lot
yes.
too, but it is so important. And it's so funny because when I speak with clients, or we're about to start working together, that doesn't come up so much. It's almost like they don't know, oh, that's like an issue. If it's
Yeah.
like a blind spot. And 9 out of 10 times, that is where we're starting. It's just like,
Mm,
okay, let's just really talk about this boundary. What boundary do you have
awesome.
here? And why are you feeling like you can't say no, or you can't put up this boundary, and what's holding you
Mm,
back? And we start really getting to the root of it and breaking that down. And it's just amazing coming out on the
oh,
other side.
incredible. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Yes. Amen. Amen. It's something I've been thinking about a lot in my own life and I've done a lot of work on
Yeah.
and continue to work on every single day. Right. I think it's something we all get
Right.
to.
All the time.
So I love that. Tell everyone, Ritu, where can people go to connect with you? I'd love if you want to share a little bit about your podcast, any
Yes.
resources that you have.
Yeah.
This is so, so helpful.
Well, thank you for letting me share. I mean, since you're listening to this, you might just come on over and enjoy the Productivity on Purpose podcast. It is tailored to women business owners. A lot of the topics we've been talking about today, just helping you live less stressful, less overwhelming lives, feeling more in control and more joyful about everything in your personal life and your professional life. So
Mm.
I'd love to have you come over there and listen to that. And also lifeisorganized.com/resources. There are some resources there on getting focused, feeling less overwhelmed. If you're more like just a paper person and like to read and email, then come on over and grab those too.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much. This was such a fun conversation. I feel like I crave this type of conversation right now in this season of my life. So you shared some really actionable, tangible things, as well as some really powerful mindset shifts that we can make to help us feel more productive, more organized, and more purposeful in our work and in our lives. So thank you so much, Ritu.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. And to you, my listener, I know that you loved this and enjoyed this as much as I did. Definitely check out Maritu's podcast. Check out her resources. We'll link everything in the show notes. And I trust that you feel as empowered as I do following this conversation. As always, thank you so much for being a listener of She Sells Radio. And I'll see you on our next episode. Bye for now.